Toni Morrison is our guest today on Radio Times.
Someone else suggested the title, Love, but Toni Morrison agreed to it because that's really what her 8th novel is about. Love in all its permutations.
Because there was a lot of danger, I think, a little risk
Yeah.
in using a word that empty in a way and that cliched.
But the name Toni Morrison on the cover guaranteed this would be anything but a greeting card of a book.
Yeah, it became exactly what I wanted the novel to do, is to recast that word, reshape it, and give it back its meaning, its original meaning, or complicate its meaning.
On the talk show circuit, reading in her velvety voice, she introduces her main character, Bill Cozy.
Who would have thought that in the teeth of the Depression, colored people would want to play? Or if they did, how could they pay for it? Mr. Cozy, that's who.
In the days before desegregation, Bill Cozy, we're told, owned the finest resort in the country for African Americans, a haven for the black bourgeoisie that had quietly developed in the United States.
But they kept low. No bragging, no sass, just curry and keep close relationships with the whites who mattered.
Whenever Toni Morrison has a new novel, her readings fill halls. Lines at her signings are often hours long. Fans of her other dark, often heartbreaking books about the black experience in America can't wait for more.
It was great to hear you read tonight.
Love went on the bestseller list as soon as it was published. It explores the losses that went with the gains brought about by the Civil Rights era, the disintegration of the world Bill Cozy and his resort represented.
Those places, by and large, collapsed for political reasons and economic reasons, and mostly because African Americans didn't have to go there anymore. They weren't limited. So I wanted to have that as the background, and then to show the people in that family and how that movement of pre, during, and post-civil rights affected them in their personal relationships with each other.
Growing up in Lorain, Ohio, not far from Cleveland, Toni Morrison never experienced anything like what happened to the characters in her book. She was born Chloe Wofford. Toni came from her middle name, Anthony, Morrison from her ex-husband. Until she went away to college at Howard University, she had always lived surrounded by whites.
Most of my writing about the black topic, the black family, the black community, is part of my life, but a lot of it was inquiry. I never lived in a black neighborhood.
In 1988, Toni Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize for Beloved. In 1993, she was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, the first African-American woman ever to win it.
Language alone protects us from the scariness of things with no names. And I like the way we've placed the picture of me when I was 6 years old in the first grade, terrified to go to school, and then the arc to 1993.
On the wall of her office at Princeton University, where she is a professor,
So that's
this enormous leap looks like a short, straight line, a natural progression from one to the other, when in fact, she's sacrificed a great deal for what she's loved the most.
I said, okay, what is it I have to do that's so important that I'll die if I don't? And there were two things. And the first one was mother my children. And the second one was right.
She was a single mother, trying to raise two sons, Ford and Slade, working full-time as a book editor, and struggling to write. Slade was 4 when she published her first novel, The Bluest Eye. It wasn't till her third book, Song of Solomon, that she dared to call herself a writer on her income tax forms. Her children are grown now. Ford is an architect. Slade is now a painter whose studio, overlooking the Hudson River, is a mile down the road from his mother's house.
Yeah, when she did Song of Solomon, she said, "I'm sorry, this whole summer, the whole time, I've not spent 1 minute with you." She's crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" I didn't even notice that. I wasn't thinking that way. She was
Crying then, laughing now. Listen to this.
So, You gonna blame me for having poison fangs? How else can I?
At 73, here she is doing one slick snake for Slade, who is 39.
I need my fangs, Mr. Smarty.
The snake is from the Aesop's fable about the Good Samaritan who gets bitten for his trouble. This retelling is part of a series of children's books mother and son have been working on together.
It's day night.
The Aesop's tales are being illustrated by Belgian artist Pascal Lemaitre.
Yeah.
In this version, the characters are hipper, and the morals, remember each fable has a moral, the morals are unrecognizable.
Art is work.
You
Just
the artist.
looks like
What do
flesh.
you sing about? Are you
Toni Morrison is used to shutting herself in a room alone, immersing herself in the rigors of writing. Working with Slade is a marked departure.
What's it like to, as an adult, suddenly find yourself in a position where you can have those falling down laughing times with your mother?
Well, I don't know if I can predict those situations, but when they come, I notice them and try to cherish and keep them as much as I can when they happen. I have to
Yes,
keep them
right.
Mothering her children and writing may have been the two things Toni Morrison decided she had to do or she'd die. But eventually it occurred to her she could do both at the same time.
Is this sort of making up for lost time?
Maybe it is a making up. Each generation has a kind of love. Some of it's really tough. You know, what my grandmother thought was loving her children was really staying alive for them. What my mother thought was loving her children was to get a better place, maybe get enough money to send you to college if you wanted to. What I thought was loving my children was giving them the maximum amount of freedom, setting an example about you can make choices in your life.
The love of a mother for her children has found its way into much of Toni Morrison's work.
Both had been home on furlough.
Here she's recording Paradise, published in 1999.
Murder. And Sohn had sobbed like the redeemed to see both her boys alive, her sweet colored boys, unshot, unlynched, unmolested, unimprisoned. Prayer works, she shouted when they piled out of the car. It was the last time she had seen them whole.
And in Beloved, a mother loved her children so much she was willing to kill them rather than see them return to slavery.
What kind of outrageous love is that?
Toni Morrison always regarded love as the agonizing subtext of her books about the legacy of slavery in this country. But with the word there before her, every time she signs her name, she's realized it's much more.
It is the real subject. I can see it now.